this exhibit is called We the People, and the conceit behind it was about the idea of our country and who we're made up of. The timing of this exhibit is not accidental. It was intended to go up over the election cycle. Presidential election cycles happen every 4 years, and they're a time of self-reflection for the country. It's a time when we get to look at who we are, and who are we as a country? Who do we want to be? What is our direction that we'd like to take? And in the last several months, in the last several weeks specifically, it's become a very polarizing and uncomfortable situation in a lot of ways. And it really is a stark choice now. We're really going to be making a decision of, for ourselves and for the world about what kind of country we'd like to be. So it's not accidental that it's portraiture. What we wanted to do is actually show the diversity and multiplicity of our society, of the Republic. And portraiture can actually be somewhat of a political act in the creation of a picture very directly of a person. It doesn't have to be. It can, but throughout history, it has often had a very political or social commentary component. So now I'd like to introduce our panelists. So this is Bhavna Mehta, and she has, I'm pretty sure she's the only person in the room who has a bachelor's in physics, a master's in electrical sciences, and a master's in computer science. I'm not going to try to say them. Okay, and she has exhibited widely and is received numerous awards, such as the 2014 San Diego Art Prize, as well as the recipient of the 2015-16 Creative Catalyst grant. And so we're very glad for you to be here. And this is Neil Shigley, and he was born in, he went to San Diego State University and studied painting and printmaking, and then went to the Pasadena Art Center College, and after that moved to New York City and was a freelance illustrator for many years and produced content for a significant amount of clients, including several Fortune 500 companies. And then we have Michael Massenberg, and he was born in San Diego, but then moved to Los Angeles, where he currently resides. And he went to the California State Long Beach, and then moved to the Otis Art Center College. And he has exhibited in museums and galleries across the country and the world, and has also completed several public art commissions, including Verizon, ESPN, and the American Jazz Museum, which I was fortunate enough to see this past year when I was attending the NCCA conference in Kansas City. So, welcome. And what I'd like to do first is I'd like to give each of you 5-10 minutes to just talk about what you would like the audience to know. So, Bhavna, would you like to start?
Sure. Thanks, Jones. Thanks, everybody, for having me here. I had no idea this was going to be a very formalized panel. So this is exciting. And I draw with a knife. I cut paper to tell visual stories. I started making art a few years ago after many, many years as a software engineering person at Nokia mobile phones. Just wanted to change the direction of my life, and I started cutting paper because paper was a very accessible medium. It's cheap. You can work with it with very simple tools, and an X-Acto knife or a scissor are super simple tools, and you can do a lot with just a simple tool and a very basic medium like paper. So I started cutting paper, but I realized that fundamentally I wanted to tell stories. I come from India. I was born and raised in India, where storytelling is kind of a basis of all of life almost. You're always telling stories about other people or about the gods, about what happened, so long ago, what's going to happen if you are not a good person. So everything is in form of a story. And I think fundamentally, I just want to tell stories. I wanted to tell stories about people using a style that I think goes back to a lot of the Indian architecture and the art that I grew up with. And so I started making work with images of women, and the two pieces that you see here behind me are almost the first pieces I started with. These women have 4 arms, and who doesn't want to have 4 arms, right? I would like to have 4 arms. So if you know anything about Indian gods and goddesses, they all have either 4 arms or more. And I wanted to take the idea of the 4 arms, but make it a more modern interpretation, and talk about a the universal role of women in our society today. Women are doing everything, and I wanted to show that. So I created this series of women who are juggling work and children and husbands and life and pleasures. And one of the thing about cutting paper is that the whole paper, the whole image is connected. Like, it's literally connected. It's one piece of paper. You're cutting out the parts that you don't want. So you are illuminating the image almost. You're making the image come out by cutting away the parts that you don't want in the image. And I think that's a great metaphor for life, and a great metaphor in terms of everything is connected. We are connected to the creatures, we are connected to plants and animals, and to each other. And so I love the medium of paper because it gives me the ability to tell layers of stories and layers of meaning will expose themselves as the image itself is exposed. So that's what I want you guys to have some background about my work and myself, and I will pass it on to Neil.
Okay. Yeah,
Well, first of all, I'm honored to have my work here, along with such accomplished artists, and thank you, Sasha, for reaching out. These portraits here are part of a larger body of work that perhaps at first glance may appear relatively transparent and that they're just pictures of people. But I would hope that once you find out that they are pictures of people who are poor, who are homeless, living in the street, that it may give you pause to consider a life that's unlike all of ours, maybe act as a doorway into that life. We are bombarded daily in this country with images of the rich and the famous, the privileged, the haves. So my portraits deal with people at the other end of the economic spectrum, the forgotten, the disenfranchised, the have-nots, giving them some face time. This series began in 2005, and it began as not a series. I approached a man on the street who had a really incredible face, and I asked if I could do his portrait. Excuse me, he agreed to it. And I liked it, and I did another and another. And originally I was coming at this purely as an artist, trying to capture likeness, trying to describe this incredible character that a lot of these people possess, a character that's really hard-earned through sometimes years of life on the street and daily struggle. But the more portraits I did and the more people I talked with and found out about their lives and daily struggles and hopes and dreams, the more I started looking at this as a human being with great empathy for these people and the situation they're in. Chronic homelessness is a really deep issue. It's complex. I have no answers. But I think that hopefully by showing this work a lot, maybe somebody who's much smarter than me will have some answers. But I do know that art has the power to focus attention, and when focusing attention, you can raise awareness. When that happens, change can happen on a society level or a personal level, meaning just treating somebody with respect. Tonight, 6 o'clock, the opening will be happening here today. About that time, there will be in the county and city of San Diego, as many as 7,000 people who are looking to get comfortable for tonight outside. And staggering number, and in some ways just a statistic, but when you think about any one of those people, for example, Ruth, 60-year-old lady who's looking to get comfortable, looking to be warm tonight, looking to be safe, have food, have something to drink, have a place to go to the bathroom, then it's not a number anymore. Then it's a small tragedy. I've entitled this series Invisible People because for many people who encounter somebody in the street, they ignore them, they avoid them, actively make them invisible. So by presenting them in this large scale, it kind of forces people in a room to confront them in some way in the situation they're in, making them visible. I know it's maybe kind of human nature, but when we look at people and we look for the things that make us different, it's easy to cast them aside and forget about them and disenfranchise them. But if we look at people to see what makes us alike, and that's most things, if we search for those things, embrace those things, that opens doors for peace, for love, for helping. And in closing, these are block prints which are carved into a block, and much like your work, I'm carving out the white areas, so the black areas was already there. And I could speak much more about the process, but I'll leave it at, again, thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. It's definitely an honor and a privilege to be able to create the work and also be able to share it with the public, because I think art is a very, very powerful thing. I mean, all forms of art. I think that I appreciate being with our fellow panelists and stuff, and also the other art in here, because I think that like was stated earlier about that, we're going through a very interesting time, and the arts are a way to connect people in all times, and especially now. So my background, I was born here in San Diego. My dad was a Navy brat, and lived up and down the coast, as he was being transferred and stuff, and we settled in Long Beach and eventually in LA. So when we settled in LA, the area that we settled in was actually what we call South Central, which now they since try to change the name, but haven't changed the conditions. But and then eventually moved to Inglewood, which is nearby, more on west, going nearby the LAX airport. And my schooling is pretty interesting because not only college educated, but also too, a lot of my art practice come through me meeting and hanging out at the Watchtowers Art Center, which is probably one of the national treasure, but for some reason the city of Los Angeles had never been able to fully embrace it, but that's a whole nother issue. And so because of that, I've been influenced greatly by the artists out of that, particularly John Otterbridge, whose portrait I have here is on the side over here called The Bridge. He's retired from directorship, but he's an active artist, and him and people like David Hammonds and Noah Purifoy, who had a major exhibition at LACMA last year, impacted by those artists, and also by another artist, Romare Bearden. So I'm saying all that because my art practice encompasses like drawing, painting, collaging, and also three-dimensional found objects and stuff. And what I love, and also I work a lot in figurative work, as you see here, and I do a lot of abstraction. So I like the combination of all these things because it gives me an opportunity to be able to tell stories and kind of share my experiences and things I want to talk about in ways that I probably didn't see myself growing up, because I'm basically the only child, pretty much quiet until people don't believe that, because when I talk about art, I can talk all day. But in the midst of all that, I also am very much interested in teaching. Work with a lot of different, from private, public, charter, hospitals, and currently working a lot with in juvenile facilities, working with nonprofits and stuff. So for me, art is for everyone, and we have proof that throughout humanity how important it is. Thank you.
Thank you. So portraiture can be quite a political statement, and it can also be a statement about subject, which I think, Neil, you're handling a lot about subject. but it can also be a personal statement as well. And so I'm curious if you could just speak about whether the work is more subject or more personal, and how the two blend and exist within the same work. So, Neil, would you like to go first?
Well, I think the work is subject, right? But the personal nature for me is, I guess it's the art, the act of making art for me. It's doing a piece of art for artists here. I get so wrapped up in the piece. The piece is done, I move on, it's done, right? So again, with these, I talked a lot about the kind of the issue of homelessness, but it's still a portrait, and I'm trying to describe how light cascades over the landscape of the human face. It's still art line design, so it becomes personal for me in that way. And I think probably, again, like most artists, it's compelled to do it. With my commercial work, I know I was getting paid. With this, it's just doing it. And so yeah, I'm not sure if I even answered that question, but.
It's fine. Bhavna, would you like to answer that question?
I think I'm mostly trying to talk about connection. And when we think about connection, I think mostly we think about other people. So portraiture is a natural segue into that idea of talking about connection, and then you can extend it to connection with the world at large, you know. So everything becomes a portrait. You know, a leaf can be a portrait of a leaf, or a plant, or an animal. And so portraiture is extended, I think, when you talk about connection and how things are all connected to each other.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes, I think for me, it's almost like all of the above of everything. My whole attention is, when I create portraits, actually is very in the same vein of, say, like someone like Chuck Close. But what happens, in my experience, what happens is, like, because I paint and draw the black body, and there are people that I know, family, friends, other artists and stuff. But what happens is somehow it gets regulated and put into a different category, like say black art or this thing, when my same intention is like Chuck Close. That's how he chooses his subjects. But I think because in our culture, it's been developed in a way as far as almost like a business model. Like, we need to know what this thing is and know where to put it. So it becomes a product and things. So instead of having like a statement that's familiar and connected to everybody, it becomes segregated. And so I think that's one of the things people automatically do without even realizing, because we've all been conditioned. You know, I don't think it's not something we're born with, but as we get older, I remember as a kid, I asked my mother a question about, like, well, first I heard the term colored, Negro, black, and then later on African American. And my question was, what are we? I mean, I'm a kid, so when you start hearing those things, it start framing how you view the world and how the world views you. And so we're in the country, we have so many different people from all over the world. And so it gets really kind of like a weird thing, which is why we have what we have today in America, where people are not sure what to think or what to feel. Because some people may not know because they've never been revealed to them, even though it's around them, but they never really looked at it. And so I think that, so it hasn't bothered me in the sense that has happened. So I decided to use it as a tool to be able to talk and share and start the conversation. Because without the conversation, we're in deeper trouble. And so I think that it's, like I said, it's all above political subject matter. I guess I can't help it. It just is.
So I'd like to ask, what place does like dichotomy between, like, say, beauty and ugliness and poverty and wealth, and in the sense of race relations, like white or black or Hispanic or Indian or other things where people get put into camps, sort of? Curious if you have any more comments about that.
I think I'll bring up the other word in this election cycle that's very hot. It's immigration and being an immigrant. And When I first started, I've been in this country for a long time, and English was my language way before I even came to this country. So I feel I had the best of both worlds almost, being raised and growing up as a young person in India and then living as an adult in the United States. I felt that I had lost a lot of my connection to India after living here for a long time, because you start assimilating. Immigrants start assimilating. You're supposed to assimilate. You're supposed to, only speak English. You're supposed to not wear your Indian clothes. And you start assimilating, and you start feeling like you're losing something. You're losing what was part of you. It happens to everybody, and it's not a conscious process, really. It happens over decades, but it happens. And when I first started making my work, I realized that it looked very Indian, and that was completely unplanned. It was completely like, whoa, where is this coming from? So I didn't fight it. I'm so glad I didn't fight it, because that was not me assimilating. That was me saying, like, wait, I'm just going to do this thing, and I'm not sure where it's going, but it's going to look Indian. I cannot make it look any other way. And I think that's something that I'm very happy about. It keeps happening over and over again. But personally, it also means, like, I didn't lose everything. Like, I haven't lost everything. On a personal level, it means that to me. So I think making, I don't know what your question was, but
that doesn't matter.
I'm completely off tangent here, because it's such a, it's a strong feeling. I think about it all the time. But being an immigrant is very, very connected to we the people. This is a land of immigrants from day one, and I think using art, you can explore that idea, not just for yourself, but for everybody. That there might be lots of people here who may never go to India, but I think you can explore that as an artist and as a viewer.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about this country, actually, is that maybe in 1900 you couldn't eat 7 days a week at 7 different completely restaurants, food from around the world, and I think that right now we're losing the joy in that, the celebration of that, and that's a very interesting point. Do either of you have something to add to that?
So talking about
however you want to respond.
Well,
I was asking about dichotomies.
I guess the only comment I would have, just generally, is don't judge me. I won't judge you. Just leave it at that. And as far as the work goes, this work that I'm dealing with, the difference between somebody living in the street and us is no difference. We get up in the morning, we put our clothes on, we have hopes and dreams. Our situation is different, but and to judge anyone, and that's an extreme case, but even to judge you about your thoughts, do what you want, right? Just don't hurt anybody.
It's like was stated before about we are in a land of immigrants, but I think one of the challenges now is because now there's supposed to be selective immigration, and I think that's where the thing that creates problems, because when you think about how the country was founded, there is people here that were displaced, moved, or however way we know the history and stuff, and then some of the same people who want to come back. Now they say, like, wait a minute, they were here. I mean, just look at the names of the streets in the cities. Spanish before we became a full union like we are. So it's really interesting to me that now there's this selective immigration. I think that's really a disservice, because what America is supposed to stand for is all of us, all these different things, and we kind of have an opportunity to really see the world without even traveling at times. Like in LA, we have, you know, I know we have all these festivals, and what's fascinating, you can go to all these festivals and you can go to, you know, you feel like you're traveling, you know, and that's the great thing. But what happens, some people say, well, I don't want to go there, or I don't know those people, or they look like terrorists, or, I mean, you hear all kind of stereotypical excuses, things and stuff like that. And I said, like, that will be our biggest downfall of how we view other people, that we can embrace and see the commonality, and also even there was differences to learn about, like, oh man, this food, this dish, or this music, you know, or this dance. I never experienced this, but it broadens your horizon. And I know at times when I'm traveling to other countries, I am really blown away about how I see we are so connected without even being connected physically, but because of certain things we have. And so I know, for instance, I went to Colombia, South America, and my first trip there, one of the Americans thought spoke me Spanish. He thought I was from there, because the mixture is so much. You can't tell who's who, and it was so beautiful because, you know, we are human beings, but at times we act like this other thing where we just divide and conquer, and it's really unfortunate. And it's something that I think humans going to grapple with forever, but it's a kind of thing we can't just give up, or there's no hope for humanity. So the immigration thing is really important, because when you say that, it's almost like it's not even people. It's this thing. Be scared of it, because they're coming to take your thing. They're coming to attack you. And it's like, no, they come here for the same reason everybody's here. They want to have an opportunity for a better life than where they were before, you know. And so that's one of our biggest challenges going forward.
So the good news is that we have some control over that. We can vote, and in this country there's opportunities to have your voice heard.
True. And I'm going to change tack slightly. So probably everyone in this room and most people on the street are carrying a high-powered digital camera in their pocket, in their cell phone. And so there's been a rise of not only everybody's a photographer now, but everybody's a self-portrait photographer in the sense of the selfie, or people are taking, you know, group portraits of each other all the time. So I'm curious what it means to each of you to be a fine artist who works with the human form in the dominant culture, which we're, you know, this like photographic obsession that we have. And I'll let you guys decide who wants to start, who has something to say.
I would say what it has done is it offers an opportunity to really be all connected, even more so. Because a lot of times when people say, well, I'm not an artist, I'm not a photographer, I'm not this, even though we've always been taking pictures through time, but now with the phone and on your, with the camera, it's like you start taking, it breaks down those barriers. And then also they have little apps for like art stuff. So people who normally didn't really consider themselves artists or creative, now have an opportunity to start playing. So it breaks down these barriers and stuff. I think it's one of the most revolutionary tools we have, in whether it be like for creativity or the social things that's happening. I mean, it's definitely changing the way how we interact, how we view stuff. I mean, like I said earlier, we always took pictures, but it was different then. It was like get in front of the camera and stuff like that, and pose for a picture. Now we're getting candid, like live shots. I mean, one of the things that was really interesting was, I can't remember what a particular band was talking about how their experience has changed when they're performing in a concert and everybody has their phone up. You know, not only taking pictures of themselves, but taking pictures of the concert. It's almost like, and there's a sense thinking like, well, are they really experiencing the music? Or are they more focused on taking pictures? And so that's kind of like that gray area and stuff, and you know, that people are still trying to grapple with and stuff. And in a sense, you're getting a little bit both, but it's sort of like a shared experience, because you want to carry that experience. Like, here's a picture of me, like here at the concert, right here, sold out. Yeah, what's up, you know? And so it's really a new phenomenon, and I think that it definitely can have a great positive impact, and also can have some areas where people are still trying to work with. You know?
I think the work and portraiture made by hand is never going to go away. I don't think it's replaceable by any amount of selfies or or work done digitally, mostly because I think the expression of each artist is completely different, and how they choose to portray somebody it comes from somewhere, inside, and I don't think you can duplicate that with a digital camera or a selfie stick. So I think work made by hand is never going to go away. So that's my 2 cents.
Agreed 100%. I think that portraiture, history of portraiture goes back centuries, where in the beginning it was portraying powerful heads of state, heads of religion, heads of industry, and it was a necessity without a camera that if you want to have a likeness of somebody who had a portrait, at some point when cameras arrived, that started to become less and less important to have an artist do that. It was done. So now people who are portrait artists are committed to that for a reason. Why? That's a good question. For me, it's kind of a compulsion. I do abstract work, I do figurative drawings, paintings, but the portraits are still, everybody can relate to a face, right? It's the most human thing there is. You'll find the eyes of somebody and look at them and see what, are they friend or foe, or whatever it is. So that's the most human thing there is. So I think for portrait artists, I guess it's a compulsion, and as opposed to necessity now.
Okay, now I'd like to ask if any of you have a question for each other.
Oh.
And then we'll open it up for questions from the audience, okay?
Boy, on the spot.
I know, it's like, now we get quiet. The hardest question tonight.
Yeah. Well, if you'd like to think about that for a second, I can take
okay.
any questions if people have questions they'd like answered. Yes?
How do you artists engage your subject in order to keep them from feeling objectified?
Great question.
Great question.
The question was, how do you avoid objectification in your subjects? Engaging the subjects as opposed to objectifying them.
I've had situations where people have actually asked me, don't you feel like you're exploiting these people? And my answer is no. And I guess my question to them, do you think it's exploiting these people? And I know that you didn't ask that question. For me, I'm not making money on this, or not commercial properties here. When I sell them, I donate money back. So I look at it like it's, and I'll call it win-win-win situation, is actually for this person, if I sell a piece of work, they will probably never individually benefit, but as a body, there's 2 or 3 organizations, the Monarch School, and then Path downtown, Father Joe's. Those are people that I donate money. Monarch School educates children of the homeless. So it's a benefit to people. It's a benefit to the person who buys it. They have a piece of art that will also further this discussion. It's a benefit to me that I am now able to keep doing this work and support my family. So it's a great question, and I don't struggle with it, but it's on my mind a lot. I don't want to, I'm not trying to glorify these people, and I don't want to give them any less dignity than they deserve as well. They're just people. And I'm pretty direct when I approach them. I'd like to do your portrait. And so it's pretty clear up front what the situation is. But yeah, it's a very deep question for me.
Pretty much all my portraiture work, unless it's something I'm kind of creating on its own, but when it's true portrait, it's actually people that I know, because I'm always fascinated about who they are, what they do, their joys, their pains and stuff. And so there's this relationship already. And so that's what get me interested in doing the portraits of these particular people. And so with that, and even when I have the camera or have them posing, but especially if I'm having the camera, I'm not looking for a particular pose. I just like take random shots as we're just talking, and they're like at ease. And a number of them already are artists, so they understand the process. And a lot of them really feel great about like opportunity for them to be like documented, or be like, in a number of cases, quite a few of the portraits that end up in some of my public art pieces, because it kind of gives a life to this person to audience of people that haven't met them, you know. And so, and in some cases, some of the portraits of people and friends of mine who have since passed on, but it keeps their image and keep their, who they are still alive. And so, so for me, it's like, because of my relationship to the subject matter is a mutual thing, so it hasn't been an issue for me. But it's a great question. Excellent question.
I can add to that just a little bit. I think my style is such that it's not that person, you know. It could be anybody, really. It's more universal. So I think that helps, but I think the story helps too. To surround the portrait with the story also helps in kind of non-objectifying the particular person. And that's my interest more than focusing on one woman or one man and telling their story. So, so thanks for the question.
I think also, I don't want to speak for you, but it's also with the intent in the heart is in the right place. It's not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. And I think there was a question here.
The block prints, do you do a replica?
So the question is, the block prints, do I do more than one? The nature of printmaking is that you carve into a block and you can make multiple prints. I think printmakers would cringe at my techniques. It's not, printmaking should be every print exact, right? And mine are not. They're hand printed by hand, they're hand carved, so everyone has got inconsistencies. I do some hand paint on the bottom and a symbol and writing. So I don't make a series. I put a number on each one. This is the first print or the second. I think some I have as many as 4, but it's not 4 of, it's just number 4. So, so yes, I have made multiple prints of some.
One is a little different.
Well, a little different in that when I inked it, the ink doesn't go down exactly right on each one, and when I hand rub it, sometimes I'll miss a spot. So there's minor differences in each print.
On the paper, I was wondering what surface you have, and if you use a light box, and what if the cut doesn't come out quite right, how do you?
Oh, the question was on the paper cutting, do I use a light box? And if the cut doesn't come out right, is that?
What surface do you use?
What surface do I use? I use a cutting mat. It's a very, it's a common surface for cutting fabric or cutting paper, or mat board or flat things. And I do not use a light box. I draw on the back of the paper. So I have to draw backwards, almost like making the print and doing, wood cuts or linoleum cuts. So I draw on the back and cut from the back so that I don't want to erase my drawing once I'm done cutting, because once you cut paper, it loses, like paper does this, like when you cut it, it's going to lose some of its integrity, and it's the thing that keeps it stable and rigid. So you don't want to erase your cutting. And so I cut on the back, but you don't need a light box really. A good table light, and if something goes wrong, only I'll know. As all artists will tell you, you're the only one who's going to know all the flaws in your work, and if it's made by hand, of course things are going to go wrong. So you just work it in. If I'm working on an image that's large, and say it has several faces, and I want to make sure those are right, I do that first, just so if I have to start over. So if I cut off an eye or a lip or something, a hand, it's very hard to fix that. So if you do that first, and if it's right, then you can work in the rest of your mistakes. But if you have to start over, then you haven't finished the whole cutting, and then you're cutting the eye out. So there's some strategies that you come up with, and that helps.
I thought of a question.
Excellent.
one piece of paper, right? If you were to, say, cut into any one of those intricate little shapes and it's now hanging,
Yes.
is that done? Or do you understand what I mean? Or as long as it's still attached? Or what if it detaches?
If it detaches, again, I'll come back to using life as a metaphor. The more your connections, the more stable you're going to be. Mm-hmm. So if your piece is hanging just by a little connection somewhere, you're going to have to somehow fix it.
Good enough.
Yeah. But if you have one shape that's connected in many places, you can make a cut and it'll still be connected.
Right.
And so you just leave it. And that's how most pieces work.
And I'm thinking these take quite a while, just by looking at them.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
As do yours.
Yes, but we're looking at those now.
Do we have any over here?
Like how you do your skills and the perspectives of your images.
So the question is, how do you sort of apply your techniques to the end result? What do you look for, and how do you apply it?
For me, it's pretty straightforward. The images are just straight on to the face. And when I walk around and I talk with people, and I'll take one photograph. I don't want to pose them. It's just as honest as I can get. So it's a pretty simple answer for me. Yeah, it's just very, very direct, as straightforward as possible.
Yes, for me, it's very similar. At times when I have other pieces that include landscaping, sense of place, it's almost to a point now, like when I'm doing that, I'm not even thinking about like how to do it. I guess probably because after a while it becomes more like a natural thing, kind of flowing into it. But that foundation is important in the beginning, because then that means, especially you're trying to make something that's reflective, accurate, and trying to get your message across, and the ability to do that is important. And so I know for me, it's like it varies depending on what piece it is. And it's interesting because I say, like, I haven't thought about that. But at times when I look at the piece, it is definitely there. And a lot had to do with, just working, but that foundation is definitely there.
Do we have another question?
I have another question.
Oh, excellent. This is great.
Love this question.
So you're a teacher, I'm a teacher.
Yes.
With my students, we talk a lot about composition, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You seem to have a really natural flow of composition. Is that in your mind when you're making your paintings? Is that part of your thought process, or is it just?
Wow. I think I am very blessed to have teachers and classes in the past, because now it's like almost, I work so spontaneous now. I will have an idea, and I may not be thinking about a particular color or composition or the form yet, but the form would kind of come up kind of early, because I would start very abstract. So it's really interesting now. It's very, very spontaneous, and so it's like, but I think that because of the foundation from the early years, there's some that's still here, hopefully, when I'm working. But yeah, that's, and when I'm finished, I may start to see and recognize some of those things. But it's not really a conscious at this point in time, because I know I take my cue from like being open and flowing and working what's there and moving things around, especially because when I'm working with influenced by, the Simage artists, where they use different materials, moving stuff around. And so that would kind of tell me the composition, the form and all that, and whatever it is. And I say, oh, this feels right, I'm going in and doing that, even though I didn't know I was going to do that in the beginning. I might start with the idea, but I don't know what it's going to look like. But definitely that's a key foundation, having to make the piece that really, successful, by having those elements in. Yeah.
Could I ask you the same question? You seem to have a great sense of design.
I think that comes from being born in India. In India, art is part of daily life. Like, you don't have this group of people who are the artists, and then you have the rest. Everybody does something. And I grew up that way. I grew up in a large family where my mother drew with sand on, in the front yard. And these are large drawings that get swept away the next morning. And you make another one. So the idea of making art is almost ephemeral, and it's also a skill that you can develop. And you can then, expand it into your life. So I feel like a lot of my style, particular style, comes from there. But it also comes from Indian architecture. It also comes from Indian, miniature paintings that are, that have some market in this country. It comes from all that. And the more I do, the more I think like that's where it's coming from, and that's exciting.
That's great. I saw the miniature painting aspect in it right away, and I was going to ask you that, and then I was like, oh, I don't want to ask her that. That's not what she sees. And there's also like the Southeast Asian sort of shadow puppet kind of work, and I really respond to that. It's really great. So I do have a question for you before I let you guys ask another one. A lot of the people in this room are art students, and so I'm curious if you could give them some specific artists that are inspirational for you that they might be able to look up after the lecture. And you can think about that, and I'll ask another question. Okay. Do we have another question? Yes?
So why do you think that people should come to the gallery and look at your art?
Okay, so the question is, as an artist, you obviously are injecting yourself, your passion and your interests. Why do you think that the viewer should give your artwork the time that you demand them to give you?
That's the first time I've ever heard that question, but I think it's an excellent question.
Very good question.
For me, I never feel like an obligation that someone has to look at my artwork, because it starts for me that it's something I have to say, I want to express. And what has happened is that sometimes it connects with other people, which I like for that to happen, but I can't control that because everybody had different experiences. So I never had an expectation like, well, they should look at my work, they should pay attention, they would buy my work, they should give me. I never had that, because that to me, that would be too selfish for me to do that, to think that like that. Because to me, for me to share the work to the world, then that means I'm not selfish now. Because I could be selfish, like, oh, it's my work, keep it to myself, and I'm not going to let everybody see it because I don't want anybody to judge it or talk about it. This is just me. So I'm revealing myself, so I'm allowing myself to have those experiences where someone connect or don't connect. And so, and then what happens sometimes, it might connect with that person later on. There were artists that I looked at in the early years where I had no connection with what they were doing, wasn't feeling it. And then 10 years later, it changed my life. So when I saw the work again, because I had a different experience and I'd grown to a different way. So yeah, I never had that attachment, and I think it also frees me up from setting myself for like disappointment or expectations. Because when we put things in the world, we have no idea how it's going to be received, when it's going to be received, because sometimes it's about the time when it happens, So I'm pretty open to it. Yeah, I'm not. If it doesn't bring the people to the piece, it happens. It's like music. It's like food. Different flavors, different interests, different tastes.
Can I just say something?
Please.
Even though you guys are art students and have art in your lives, I think I feel the same. You don't have to look at my work, but look at art. Like, art informs life. It informs life, and the same reason you read good books and the same reason you listen to good music is the same reason you should look at artwork. But go to the museum once a week. That would be my choice if I was a student.
Very good advice.
So the word should is interesting. I don't think anybody, would I say that? Should is maybe the operative word there for me. If somebody appreciates the work, it's an honor to me that they would do that. And is for young artists here, why are you doing art? what is your purpose in making the art? Is it for you? Is it for somebody else? I mean, all of that is part of this. If you want to make a living selling art, be careful, because you have success, you start copying. Hey, can we have, I'm not doing that anymore, but we want that piece again. So what's your purpose in making art? For me, I'm compelled to do it. I wouldn't do anything else. I have children. I'm not sure if I push them into the arts. It's a tough life. It's a fantastic life. It's great. And I wouldn't do anything else. But so the idea of hoping somebody, sure, everybody wants some people to love your work. Oh, we love it. It's great. But is that the need? No, it's not. The work will be done either way.
Can you just talk about context of the work in place?
Okay. Yeah, for me, it's like it does start off with particular inspirations and influenced by a particular person. But once I put out into the public, I don't try to control it, especially if I do public art pieces, because basically what I'm trying to do is, because a lot of times they may not know the person who I'm conveying, but they still see somebody who they know. And I don't want to take that experience away from them. And it really, really resonates because I do a lot of public art. I work with Metro and like I mentioned about Kansas City. But Kansas City, that was particular because they wanted the icons, the Miles Davis, the Coltrane's. So that had to be that because it was the history of that thing. But when I'm doing like something about community, I might use images of people in the community interacting within the piece. But it's not so much as it has to be a portrait of them, but it's the spirit of them that hopefully will be resonate with not only the people that are present, but also in the future. So that's what my goals and intention. But yeah, that is a great little thing to kind of, thing where it may start off that way, but I try not to control it, because I want people to when people bring their experience and their reaction to the piece, then to me, that's what it's supposed to be about. Not so much about like, is that so-and-so, it has to be so-and-so. Only when it's specific, like I said in the case with, like the jazz piece. Yeah.
Interesting question. I guess the nature of any piece of art, is it important that we know the intent of the artist? I mean, does that enhance the experience or not? I mean, if you bring to a piece of art a lot anyway, do we need that? And I think that's always the question, right? When you're making a piece of art, is it an illustration where you have to tell a story, or is it a personal view of some situation? So, and you touched on a few interesting things. That area is, you say ground zero, it's full of homeless people, and walking down there, and I do it a lot, you're in another, your antenna's up all the time, which these people, you're watching your back all the time, because it's this underworld, really, that people have their whole, they sleep here, they eat here, they protect their work, their space, and you say you step over that person, people are homeless, but they still have a space, right? And you can't, for me, approaching people is the hardest part of this, because you think it'd be easy. No, it's very difficult to walk up on somebody and...
There's not a door you can knock on and
no,
introduce
right,
yourself.
and I've fortunate enough to be able to show the work to a number of these people afterwards. A lot of times, where do you find them? Where do you find somebody without a home, right? Like you say, you can't go knock on their door. I've searched, and so the context for me is, I think that for people, when I started out talking, that's just a portrait of a person. Does it add something to know that they're disregarded people? For me, yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, interesting.
The only thing I can think about is, I think for my work, people's experiences and backgrounds come with the experience of viewing the piece. They somehow there's an interaction. So this piece where the woman has a cage on her head, and there's always a question whether the guy is taking the cage out or is he putting it on. And so, these little tidbits in the piece, like there'll be something that kind of like, it's like this flashpoint for people. So the context of their own lives, I think, matters when they're looking at the work. And I don't know, I don't almost like to share like where I was coming from, because it doesn't matter really. And sometimes it informs my work even more when I hear the stories that people come up with. So I think the context of the viewer matters a lot when they're looking at the work. Where are they coming from?
Okay, last question.
What do you hope will be your legacy?
The question is what? So this is a very. So I want you all to be very modest. Okay. What? The question was, what do you hope to be your legacy to the world?
Hope. Hope. I've never thought about that ever. It's not even crossed my mind. Legacy to the world. It has nothing to do with art. It has to do with my children. Just giving them a good life, happy life, constructive, positive life that they can thrive. So that would be my legacy.
I guess for me, for everything I do in life, I had definitely started off with the art, but the art has led me into a lot of different things where I got a chance to meet a lot of people, travel, and at times people told me how much of a difference what I do or the conversation or whatever thing we did together has made a difference. And so if I can make a difference on different levels, and it may not be a particular picture that I painted, but it may be like, because I did paint that picture, we was able to do something that could probably impact their lives or many others. And that's what kind of led me into doing the teaching in the way that I'm teaching. And so I get a chance to meet a lot of people, all ages, especially young people. And when people come back years later saying that they remember, they thank me and stuff like that, that warms my heart more than say like, because somebody like I mean, I've been in a juvenile facility like just recently, and kids like, oh, I know that, but not so much that they recognize, but they were engaged. They got excited. They're locked up. I had no expectations knowing that they're going to get excited by seeing something they recognize and they see me. And so what happens is now I can tap into their joy, and we can have these conversations about other stuff, about what you want to do afterwards, what's going to happen, when you become an adult. But that's what gets me really connected to the world. The art introduced me to it, but after that, it's sort of like this one. So I guess my legacy want to be like what kind of difference I made with each individual I come in contact with, directly or indirectly.
That's a toughie. I don't think about it much, but I think like this connection. Mm-hmm. This is it. I come back to the word connection, and it works many ways in my work. But the fact that you asked me a question, I think and if I made a connection with you, like, that's the legacy. I don't know. That's the first thing that pops in my mind.
So I'd like to thank all of you for coming, and thank the artists. Those was very thoughtful questions, and I really appreciate your time.